Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Writing Visual Studio Extensions with Matt. That's me. And giggling in the background, we have none other than Mr. John Galloway. Hello, John. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good.
So
It's good to be here with you.
Yes, it's fantastic to have you back. You haven't been here for like a month, I'd say.
It's been a while.
Yeah. Yep. And of course, you're in sunny California, and for some reason, today is like 78 degrees. What is that? That's like 25 degrees Celsius or something like that. Here in Redmond. It's very bizarre. Yeah. It's fantastic.
It's that magical time of year. Like, it's people tell me like summer is the best, or what spring is the best. I forget. It's like it's a beautiful short period, but it's like really amazing.
Yep. Before we enter into the rainy season before summer, probably. Yeah. Okay. So, John, you haven't seen, and maybe some of the viewers right now have not kind of seen the stuff we've been doing with what's called the Community Visual Studio Toolkit.
So, I saw a little bit. I did watch last week or the week before, and it looked really cool. So this, if I heard right, it's like it's an open source kind of. You're super smart about building Visual Studio extensions, but it takes a lot to learn how to build a good Visual Studio extensions. It takes watching a lot of Mads videos and reading a bunch of Mads docs and stuff. And it looks like this community toolkit is like the Mads smarts abstracted into a toolkit.
That's I guess you could look at it that way a little bit.
Okay, it was my guess.
But it's not so much about me. It's more about like the community. It's about harnessing the wisdom of the community, right? Of which I'm a part of.
Yeah.
And so are others, right? So, for instance, we have Cynthia here. She did some really cool stuff with some MS Build stuff that's going to end up in a NuGet package here. I haven't had time to look at the NuGet package stuff yet, but I will soon. But no, the idea is to create to figure out if we as a community can come together and improve on what it means and what it takes to write an extension.
So you're not starting from scratch and doing a bunch of manual work. You're starting from a better place.
Start from a better place, make things easier, more discoverable, less prone to errors. Like, do you even know how to code against certain APIs? Are you sure you're following best practices and so on? It's about solving those issues too.
Cool.
So anyway, there's a bunch of projects, right? One of them is the toolkit. Another one is templates. Like, let's start from a better starting point, but also like we can add new item, and then we can get kind of almost exactly what we need, and we just need to modify things a little bit. So it's about
that toolkit. This is the link for that, right?
That's the link for that. Yeah,
that's the link. Awesome, cool.
So the toolkit is an API. It's like a wrapper, and if we go take a look at my screen here. We now have our own repo on GitHub. It used to be just hosted on my GitHub, but now we have our own place, github.com/v6community.
Nice.
Yeah, so we have our own org. And it's my intention to move the templates in here as well. So now the templates have been on my repo for a few years. I'm going to move them in here as well, so we can kind of put all these things together that, they belong together. They belong in sort of a community thing. They're all part of the same story. And so the idea is that they go in here. So here we have some of the vsct stuff that I was showing off last time or 2 times ago with some IntelliSense and cool stuff. And here's the toolkit.
Nice.
And
cool.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. So I want to show some of the things. And, I do really hope that everybody want to participate, keep up to date at least with or maybe not keep up to date. That's not what I mean, but check out the repos, check out the issues, open new ones. I've enabled discussions, so we can have discussions without opening an issue. There's now a feature for discussions.
Oh, cool.
So if you go into a toolkit, discussions, we can just start. It's like a forum. So we can start helping each other figuring out where are the pain points so that we can come up with solutions. Okay. Wow, Kevin, that's a great comment.
Very cool.
All right. I like that.
Yeah, I like that with discussions because, there's a lot of places where an issue isn't really the right thing. An issue is kind of tracking something that's like resolvable and may end up in a pull request and all this. And sometimes the discussion is like, hey, what do we all think about this? Or like, is there a best practice for this sort of thing, or that kind of stuff?
And a discussion can be promoted to an issue. So if we figure out, hey, this is actually something we want to do, it could be that you say, hey, I always find it difficult to iterate the files in a project. And is there a way to optimize that? Then we can have a discussion about that. And then it turns into, yeah, let's actually, I think we've discussed, the different aspects of how we could solve this. Let's just turn it into an issue so we can actually solve it.
Yep.
So please participate in that. Don't be afraid to open things, discussions or issues. And what's really important is, don't be afraid of like looking like you don't know anything, and that's what's holding you back, because you feel like it's a stupid question or something like that. It's absolutely not. That's the whole point of why we have this toolkit, is to make it much simpler and much more easy to understand extensibility. So those are like, I would almost prefer to have that type of question where you're kind of in doubt. It's like, oh man, am I the only one in the world that doesn't know this? I feel embarrassed to even ask. Like those are the most important.
So for the toolkit and stuff, do you have like some contributing guides and stuff, some like things to let people know how to get started?
No, I don't really. I think I should totally add that.
Or
right now,
contribute.
yeah, I think right now the contribution to begin with is like, let's identify what it is that we want to do. So I do list out a bunch of things like that are the problems.
Yeah.
And how we solve them, right? So these are like, okay, a lot of legacy stuff, old APIs, they look ugly and hard to, let's fix that up. But there is API documentation. So if you click this, you can actually go in and see like a base command. There's a base command now, and you can actually, it's so cool that it even shows you examples, right?
That's really good. Yeah.
So you can get an overview of what's here before you even take a look. So let me just show you some of the latest stuff. Some of these discussions take place actually on pull request after the pull request has even been merged. So it's kind of, go and get in there and star the, is it starring? How do you follow it? Star the project? Is that how you follow it? Or get notifications, whatever. Follow the project so that you don't miss any of these conversations. Okay. I want to show you something from a conversation that we had just the other day. And I talked to the team about some things. So here's an interesting thing. So when we're dealing with commands, typically we have our GUIDs, and then we have our IDs, and a GUID and ID pair is what's called a command ID. Like those two together uniquely identifies a command, and we can now create a command handler to handle it. Okay. And so anyway, but then, we started thinking about this. Well, why do we even have a GUID that's separate from the package? Right? It should be kind of implicit in the package. And then I was like, well, hang on. The package already has a GUID. What if we just reuse the package GUID? Like right here, I only have one GUID symbol, which is the package. This is the one I use in here to specify the GUID. Right. You can see here the value of it, 0527. That's exactly this one here. Right?
Yeah.
So I don't actually need to have a separate GUID symbol to put my commands under. I can just put my command, integers like IDs right under the one from the package. And I've been looking at several different ones from other people as well, like CodeMate and some of the big ones. And they only have a single command set. They only have one GUID that they put all their IDs under. So I'm like, okay. I want to make sure that if you want multiple GUIDs because you want to separate things out, maybe you find it better organizationally. I don't want to stop you doing that. The toolkit shouldn't get in the way. But I feel like this is a nice way to just clean up. So we have like a more tight vsct file, fewer GUIDs, right? And it also allows us for a kind of a different way of registering our command handlers. So let's go look at a command handler. Check this out. This is all that it takes.
That's super simple.
I just put an attribute up top that says, hey, which of the IDs do you want? I had 3 commands, right? I had multi-instance, run a window, and theme window. So which one do you want? Okay, this is one. And then it just infers, hey, if you don't specify a command set GUID, we'll just use the one from the package. But I could go in here and say package, GUID, and then, I only have one GUID in this case, right? But I could have multiple, and then I could have specified that right there. And I would have to use the string like this because it's an attribute. Someone is asking if this is live. Yes. If you're watching it while we're recording it, the person asking, you are watching it live.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I think this is kind of cool that you can decide. You get the best of both worlds, and you can use an attribute for these things. So you no longer have to override a bunch of stuff. This is all there is.
Well, it's probably, I mean, if you're doing GUIDs for different things, I'm sure there have been times where you copy and paste the wrong GUID or something, and you're troubleshooting that too, right? This is great to be able to, like, you can immediately see.
Yep.
I could almost see, I mean, it's close where you could almost do like a name of sort of thing. Although, I mean, this is fine. This is enumerable here. So.
Yeah.
Nice.
But then the question becomes, well, why even specify it here if it follows the command GUID, or sorry, the package GUID? Why not have it in the package class? What if the package class, you could just specify it in here? So you would put your ID here, right? So that it was all like the package class had that. So some people thought that was a really, really good idea for various different reasons. And there's actually nothing stopping you from overloading this initialize async method to do exactly that. But we would have to do a little work to make that work. But we could totally do that. I personally think I like to have it isolated to the command handler class itself. I don't think that the package class itself needs to know how my command handler here, how that hooks things up to handle a specific command. That's just me. So any comment on this would be great, and feel free to open some discussions and engage on the GitHub repo. We're going to consolidate all this sort of stuff on the GitHub repo, and so that's cool. And by the way, just to make sure that this idea of reusing the GUID from the as a command set GUID here, if it had any, like, let's say, non-obvious consequences, I actually went ahead and talked to sort of the Ryan, who's the he knows everything about the command table, right? He's the authority in the whole world, and he's like, yeah, that's fine. He's basically saying GUIDs are just namespaces. They're just to separate things around, separate things apart. So it only becomes like maybe awkward if you have multiple extensions that want to use the same namespace or place commands in the same locations, or if you have multiple packages per extension that each does their vsct files differently.
So you need to uniquely, yeah.
So it seems like, okay, so for the 98% case, this is just simpler. And then you have those edge cases, or the maybe 1% cases, or whatever, 2%, 5% cases that require something else, and they can just do it differently. They can do it the old way or whatever. I don't think we have to optimize for those. I want to optimize for I want to create a happy path.
Yeah, for
that is as broad as possible.
Yeah.
But I don't want just to include everyone, like 100% of the cases. I don't want to make it harder to use, if that makes sense. Just to include those additional 2%.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like that's a sacrifice that's not needed.
Cynthia said she likes the reflection idea with attributes, and you could almost scan for commands to init and not need the individual inits.
Oh, wow. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, if you instead of using async package, you use the Toolkit package, then yes.
Wow.
The only thing is if you need to pass in variables or whatever to your command, then you still have to initialize it somehow. Or not initialize it, but you have to be able to give it information. But that's kind of interesting. If you just do it with attributes, we can totally. Okay.
I have one other question here, and this is an outsider newbie sort of question, but whenever I hear of things like reflection and scanning and things like that, is there space for code generators for some of this sort of stuff?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. I think the answer is yes. I think it's something that it's so new. I have never thought about it. I've used code generators in the past as part of, like, in Visual Studio, you have the concept called single file generator. From WinForms, is like the code behind that's automatically generated.
Yeah.
And I use that in different extensions, and we actually use some right here. This one here is generated.
Yeah.
You can see here, it's the custom tool.
Yeah.
Run custom tool. But that's not the C# one that gets compiled into your project. So that would be interesting to see if there's something we can do there. Oh, based on these attributes, we're just going to compile things directly into your project. That might be super interesting. So let's keep that one in mind. That's not a bad idea at all.
Cool.
Yeah.
This is really neat. This is exciting to see, and you've got this community area where people can discuss things and.
Yep. So
cool.
The next stage here is like, let's broaden things, like come up with a plan on what are the different helper methods, extension methods, areas of which that are hard today that we want to make easier, and let's get that ball rolling, because we need to kind of understand the scope of this, so that we can better organize around it and get things done. So please don't hold back. Let's get all the feedback we can and participate, please. Okay.
So, and that's the link that's at the VS Toolkit that'll get you over into this org, right? So
yes.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Over into the org V6 community. That's right.
Yep. Awesome. This is cool.
Okay, so that was sort of the update. I'm thinking about maybe I should do like an update every time, but I don't know. But this time it was just kind of an update, and now we should move on to today's topic. If we had like addressed all the. Is there any comments coming in or questions?
Yeah. Let me see. There were a few comments. Let me see. One, I just want to this is cool. I love it when people that are new to programming ask a question. You're writing C language. This is C#. It's C-like. It's similar to C. If you're new to programming, there's the same family of programming languages. But like people that are new to programming are always welcome on our streams. So that is so cool. Let me see what else. This was interesting. Anton was asking if there's a way to check extensions for security vulnerabilities.
There is not, like in terms of if there are any specific extension things for that. There are, like, you can run whatever tools you have for .NET to look at that, whether that be, maybe some, John, for .NET.
Well, there's some, like there's SonarQube, and there's some other things that are like both extensions and then at the CI level. But I think also when you publish to the Visual Studio gallery, it also does some testing there as well too, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't test the .NET parts of it. It tests for other things like zip bombing or other things like that. Okay. But I wonder if there are any analyzers. Hey, this is a good topic for a discussion. Like, what type of analyzers should we have by default when you say file new Visual Studio extension project? Like, what adds value? What type of stuff do we need? Maybe we need a custom analyzer, or actually we have the analyzer that is just the Visual Studio SDK analyzer. So maybe we could start discussions about, should we contribute to that as a group, and how do we do that?
Yeah, and so there's probably some that are specific to extensions, but I got a question on this recently, and I looked it up. And SonarQube is one. There's a security code scan, which it's like a security code scan, GitHub IO. Like there's a few others that are like, they are Roslyn analyzers that will look for common security issues, but those are just generic C# scanners. But it is cool that they do that. They'll look for things like all kinds of things, including like bad patterns, like including passwords or things in your code. They'll look for, security is complicated. There's all kinds of things where you can just accidentally leak some information or whatever. So it's cool that, and I like that analyzers are kind of unintrusive. Like they'll pop up and say, hey, there's maybe a problem here, but
Yeah. And so Jan, he's saying we could have a V6 analyzer. So we do have one. So the official one that comes in with the Visual Studio SDK meta package, it's actually open source on GitHub. And so So I don't know if we want to create our own or we just want to contribute to it, but I should mention that it couldn't be part of our organization because it's the official one. But Andrew Arnott, who's the guy that's maintaining that, he's like he just took a pull request from this very community like no more than like 2 or 3 days ago. So so they're very responsive and that's pretty cool.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Accessibility, John.
Yeah, that's the thing for today, right?
That's the thing for today. And before you think, oh man, that's kind of boring, or another session about accessibility, it's how many programmers are really not fully able and all that sort of stuff. You'd be surprised. There's so many different layers of accessibility. Neurodiversity. I don't know if you've heard about this term, neurodiversity. That basically means like, I don't know what it basically means. I'm not very good at this sort of stuff, at explaining this sort of stuff. But there's so many different ways you can have potential issues with using software. Mm-hmm. And if we as developers, we're aware of these things, and we can sometimes very easily and very simply just make a few modifications. Then we basically open up and we have our user base, right? We can now have more users using our stuff successfully. And a lot of accessibility is also related to like temporary stuff. Like you can temporarily have like a broken hand or a wrist, and so now you have to like do all your programming just with like your left hand. And in that case, like maybe the mouse is like problematic, and you need to be able to use some keyboard shortcuts instead. Like for instance, right?
Yep. Exactly what I was thinking, and that's something that they point out. It's a spectrum, a lot of these things, and it can be temporary, or it can be like I have a partial thing, or maybe I'm not like, I don't have a huge vision disorder, but I get headaches if I look at certain things with low contrast or whatever it is, and so yeah, just opening things up also can do, like for instance, there can be things where having things subtitled or whatever allows people to listen to something that they would otherwise have to watch or whatever. So yeah, there's a lot of things where it just opens up and makes things easier to use for everyone. And
when we're talking about extensions, of course, we want developers using Visual Studio to be able to use our features too. And so, if you're doing commands and all that sort of stuff, you're probably fine. But if you're doing tool windows, custom WPF, WinForms, that sort of stuff, whether that's tools option pages or tool windows or something, then we probably need to do a few things. So, and I have a great trick. This is something I learned from Dante. So, months ago now, I had Dante on the Visual Studio office hours live stream, and we talked about like what can you do to make things more accessible. And he had like the best tip I have ever gotten, because I'm from the web world, and we have like these automated tools that will check for certain things. Granted, they can't find more than like 40% of issues, so some manual checks are required. And there are some things for WPF as well, like accessibilityinsights.io. So go check that out. That's an app that can help you find things automatically. But there's something we can do. Oh, I thought I was launching this thing. There's something we can do that for that manual test pass. That is. I didn't actually know how to manually do it without installing screen readers and all this sort of stuff. And I think for a lot of people, that's one step farther than they are willing to do. So let's look at Visual Studio. So here I have a tool window, and I'm going to do something to see here whether or not we are compliant, if you will. Let's just get the narrator. Hey. So I don't know if you can hear the narrator speaking here, but I'm going to just tap my
window. Use VS theme checkbox checked.
Can you hear that, John?
Yep, I hear that.
Okay, so I'm going to tap my way through.
Open dialog button. Hyperlink. Interesting link.
Okay, so I'm just tapping my way through. Notice here it kind of just skipped. Here was some great text in the text box and an important label. It just skipped over those. So if you're not reading, then you're not, or if you're not seeing this, you're not, you can't hear it either, right? So
Click here. Edit. Enter full name. Edit.
So this one just says edit. It doesn't say what's the thing, and this one says
Edit. Enter full name.
enter full name is somewhat useful, but it doesn't say like, well, full name of what, or name of what is the purpose of this text box, right?
Edit.
Here's a combo box we come down to now.
Combo box. Collapsed.
Okay, let me.
Expanded. 6th, 4th, 6th, 4th, 2nd.
But what is this combo?
2 of 6.
What am I setting?
2nd.
Yeah.
Combo box. Collapsed.
What is this combo box about? Like, what's the whole purpose of me selecting something from it?
Sign up for newsletter checkbox unchecked.
See, that's a good one, right? You can really hear. That's a perfect one.
Yellow. Radio button. Purple. Radio button. Non-selected.
Okay, yellow and purple. What does that mean?
First. 1 of 6.
Okay, so you kind of get the point. Like if you so good news is here that keyboard kind of works, except that it didn't select the text up here that I kind of wanted to, that because that's maybe very important. So I want to make sure that I can do that. Task
switcher. Select community.visuals pane.
All right.
User turn exiting narrator.
I'm going to turn off the narrator again. So let's see if there's something we can do. And so I'm going to grab, what's it, this one? Let's see here. So I just want to show you a few things, and then I can share an important thing about commands as well, that I'm very guilty and have not really have done much about in the past, but I want to do that going forward. Okay, so here's the thing. If we want that text to be read out loud, here, text block. Let's see here. Where's the tab stop? Let's see here. Hang on. So we can set some properties, automation properties. Where's the tab stop? Or maybe that's not on the text block. All right, tab stop. True. Okay, so the text block on its own can't actually get focus. So we want to make this maybe into a label like this and say, is tab stop true? Like that. So that would be kind of nice. I think actually, John, I think hot reload here would actually work if I was debugging, if I hit F5. Did you know that hot reloads work in when you write extensions, John?
I had no idea.
It's kind of cool.
Wow. Is that super new? The hot reload?
No, it's been there for several minor versions.
Wow.
See, hot reload, boom.
What?
So now I should be able to tab stop over it. Oh, why didn't it do that? Is tab stop true? That's kind of weird.
Do you have to set a tab index, or does it automatically?
Maybe. It's like if I set it to 0, let's see here. 1.
So Jan says, making labels a tab stop will interfere with the flow. Yeah,
so this might be a bad idea. Well, that's right. It depends on if it's super important, right? And they need to read it somehow. Like it's like having a headline. You want to make sure they read it. Okay, then we have stuff like enter full name right here. That was the problematic was because what exactly are we doing? Where is enter full name here? Enter full name. So that's not really that interesting. If you don't like enter, maybe just set enter name, like enter name of what? So what we probably want to do is that we want to say name of pet, right? For instance. So what's the name of pet? And we want to give this a name and say this is name, LBL name, I don't know. And then we can go down in our text box and say, okay, this is automation properties, and we can give it labeled by. What was the syntax here? Does it? Oops. Labeled by this. Is that right? How did that work? Oh, binding element name. Here it is. I copied the wrong thing. Can you believe it? So, LBL name. Boom. There we go.
It's interesting. It's a backward syntax. Like in HTML, you do the label has a label for the control you're labeling, and then the control refers over to the label.
Well, both yes and no, right? So yes, for label for in HTML for sure is right, and you give it the ID of the thing you're labeling. But HTML also have the aria dash attributes, and there's actually one called labeled by in aria. So this is exactly the same concept as labeled by on the web. But you're right, it's the opposite from the for, and that's because sometimes we're using different types of controls, right? It's not always a form control. It could be on the web. It could be a div that's content editable. Well, then you have to, you can't like. Anyway, so the way you can reference other objects like this makes that a lot smoother.
So I have a question that came up into my brain just now, and I'm going to blurt it out. But here we're giving our help text and our label are in English, and like some of these, is it possible to localize this as well? So like when you're giving,
like localize. Yeah, you can localize all this. So that's kind of what this example here did with the local resources. So if you have a resx file,
perfect.
You can localize that. And so with Visual Studio and extensions, you can localize just the way you would normally with any .NET app. Of course, when we get into localizing something like your vsct files, then you're in for a world of pain. Maybe that's for discussion. But localizing vsct files are really hard. And the same with the v6 manifest file, like title, description, that sort of stuff. And that's not for now. That's for a different time, but that's very hard.
Possible, but hard.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess the whole point is like to go through your windows, go through your tab stops, right? Make sure that everything that you tap your way through makes sense. So everywhere you can, everywhere you land on after you tap, reads out correctly to you. So use the built-in narrator. Narrator is built into Windows. It's fantastic. So so that will probably get you, I don't know, I'm just making this up, 80% there, right? Or 50% there. It's going to give you a lot more than if you didn't do it. So, and this is just good to do regardless of anything. Like make sure your tabs are correct. So because people navigate with the tab key, whether they're, has a disability or not. And so make sure you do that. And then the other one is like go through and add those automation labels and all this sort of stuff, which is super simple to do. And use the narrator to just hear, okay, I'm now paused at a certain object or control. Am I getting the right audible cue here? Make sense? And so that's all there. Just go search for WPF accessibility and you will end up right in here, and you can see how to make all sorts of things accessible from your code behind, or
that's one thing that's like you talked about using the narrator, and it's super humbling, but it really reveals a lot. Open up the app, turn on the narrator, close your eyes, and see how far you get. And it's really like it does a few things. One, it'll help you find even those things like, hey, I've got my tab stops wrong or something. But then also it really also like gives me a lot of appreciation for developers that are dealing with an accessibility issue and still are amazing developers. It's really cool.
And I went through, I don't know if I have it installed here. Developer news. I actually went through and did that on this particular extension. Like I found out because this up here, Let me zoom in. This up here, this little gear icon, it's actually just an image that I have like a click event handler associated with. And so it wasn't a tap stop, so I had to make it a tap stop, and I had to make it such that, you know, it read out correctly. What is this? This is settings, right? So I fixed up this extension here completely, the developer news, just by doing what I just showed here. Maybe I didn't show it that effectively, but that's super important. So go ahead and check that out. You'll be happy that you did. And so will your users. Another thing that I want to show is something that I'm not very good at. And for this we actually can't even use, we can't use hot reload because this is about commands. Oh, actually, before we get there, maybe I can tell a little bit about how we're looking at accessibility on the Visual Studio team, like how we're thinking about these things. Because that might be very relevant, because of course we develop features for Visual Studio just like everyone here watching this, right? And so there's these levels of accessibility, you know, A, B, C, and D, and F. And they're like, F is, okay, there's no accessibility, it doesn't work. Like you can't like just use your keyboard, or like if you're blind or something, you can't have screen readers read things out, and you won't be able to use the feature. That's F. That means that's the worst possible, right? And then D is, okay, it can be used, but it's super hard, something like that. And then level C, and that's where we are with Visual Studio most of the time, is you can use all the features. You are unblocked from using everything. And so that is your minimum level. So if you think about it that way, think about unblocking everyone as your absolute minimum thing to do. And that's where we are with Visual Studio, but we're trying to get up to level B. And if you want to go to level B, I don't know, by the way, if these are official sort of levels from like the WCAG or something like that, or they are just something we use internally. But level B to us means that's where you have experiences that are specifically aimed at accessibility. So it could be, instead of just making existing things work like level C, we're now doing things that we do specifically so that they're optimized maybe for work on like for people with disabilities of certain sorts, right? So you can think about that. If you go there, you're basically a hero, and that doesn't necessarily have to be hard to get to. It depends on the complexity of your software. And I'm not sure about level A, but I think it's something to do with like you can like anyone will never be slowed down using your product. It's like super smooth, and that one is very, very, very hard to get to, I think. But it's one that we want as our vision, as our North Star that we want to aim toward, right? And it might always be a little bit out of reach, but we want to reach for it. So,
it goes like across the board. Like I get, for instance, like I help with the social media and Twitter stuff for Visual Studio for Mac, and I posted an animation in it, like an animated GIF, and I got pinged, and they said like, "Hey, you need subtitles for this because it's not accessible," you know, and we have a lot of automated scans. Like for people watching may not know this, but like our code has a lot of automated scans that will flag on things. And then we do internal dog food days. And again, like in Visual Studio for Mac, I go through these scenarios using voiceover on Mac, and it's hard. Like I have so much appreciation for people, you know, even when we're doing the work to light up the features, but it's a real skill. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So the good thing is, like, if you already have some practice from other WPF WinForms apps, they directly translate to extension development, and the other way around. So that's kind of cool. So here's one. So these are my 3 commands. They were listed up here in View, Other Windows, and then in here. And the one way we can navigate all the commands with the keyboard is with the Alt key, right? So if you just hit the Alt key and nothing else, let me zoom in here so we can better see. Notice what happens up here. If I just hit the Alt key, you see how they all got a little underline under a letter. That means I can just hit Alt and then that letter, and they will expand that menu. So Alt V opens View. Okay, and you can see here how some of these most of them have. See, developer news don't. I should have added that. That's my bad. And Jan didn't do that for his extensibility logs, Jan. That's homework for you. We both have homework here. But see, even some of the built-in ones don't have that. So I can't just say Alt D, Alt, what would be a good one here? Let's get what's a window I don't have open? Let's find a good one. Arrow list, task list. No, it doesn't have one either. Oh, now it all disappeared. Alt V. Oh, when I scroll, interesting. Okay, so if I scroll, they go away. So task list is K. It's under K. So I can say Alt V, Alt K, and that opens the task list. So you see here, that's kind of a cool way to navigate using the keyboard. So you can get used to that. So even if your extension does not have a keyboard shortcut for every command, that doesn't mean that there's not a keyboard shortcut, right?
And this is another great example of like doing something that makes it more accessible, also makes it just more usable for everyone. Yep. And like when you learn those commands, if there are windows you're using regularly, you can just like boom, boom, boom. My first professional programming job, my boss had like, he would say, you need to learn to program without a mouse. And he would actually like, Fridays were no mouse Fridays. And like, it took some time, but like after a bit, you get so much faster, you know, and like learn all these keyboard accelerators and shortcuts and stuff. So.
Yeah, right. Keyboard accelerators. That's the right word for them. Thank you, John. I forgot about that. You know, when I hear the word accelerator, I just can't help but think about Internet Explorer 8 accelerators. I think everyone in the world but me has forgotten about those.
There were a lot of features in IE8 that were like there for a short time, and then
All right, so you see other windows has an E, Alt E. So to get to the other window here, I hit Alt V and then Alt E. And so now I need to find a place in here. I have to find a letter that hasn't been taken by another command in here, okay? So let's just start. I have runner window. Runner window is the one, the first one. So let's go BE, runner window. So we have an R. Let's see here. Man, there's so many that doesn't have any of these accelerators. So, R is taken. Okay, so I can do U. I'll make the U the thing that you click for the runner window. So how do we do that? We're going to add an ampersand like that. In WPF, it's underscore, but in extensions, it's ampersand. So let's just see if that actually works. But I can't believe that there's so many of these accelerators missing from even the built-in stuff. I wasn't actually aware of that. So I need to talk to Dante about this and see what we can do. So was there some, let's see here. So Red says that for the last 10 years, you've been a non-sighted developer. Okay. Do you use or do you find accelerator keys useful? Like the stuff that we're going through here? Because I'm wondering if there's something we need to double down on from Visual Studio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are a few people in the comments. Also, Alexander, blind and use Visual Studio daily. And I don't know if you've met or worked directly with Sakeb Sheikh, but he was in some build keynotes and stuff. And yes. he's non-sighted and he's amazing. He's like written all this cool stuff. So,
yeah. He is cool. So I don't know if people can see it. I think if I zoom in, unfortunately, the accelerator key will not show, or So that it now has an underline under the U. So that means I can now do Control Alt V for the view, then E for other windows, and then U for the runner window. So let's just try that. Alt V E U. Boom. Alt V E U. So that was a good one. That was a good one. Then we have a theme window. Let's just see if we can. Let's see if the T is available. This is too bad that this is kind of a manual thing, though.
Mm-hmm.
I can't just see here's a list that's taken or available.
So when you dig into it, like when you hit Alt pretty much anywhere, there are these shortcuts, and it includes like Office. It includes like all across Windows. You can navigate the Start menu. Like you can do pretty much anything without a mouse.
Yeah. So if I'm now in Edge, if I hit Alt, it puts the focus up here on the settings. So now I can just hit Enter, I guess, and it opens the menu. Yeah. The theme window was good. Multi-instance is not good, or the M I can't use. I can probably use I. I'm just going to do I. Multi-instance. And so if you're wondering what this means, this is the XML encoded version of just an ampersand, of just this character, the and. So, but we're in XML, so we have to XML encode it. Yeah. Okay. So Red replies here that both hotkeys and accelerator keys are necessary. They're powerful and needed. Well, thanks for chiming in on that. That I will bring that up. Absolutely. I guess maybe if some of these that were missing, if they have a keyboard shortcut, then it may be okay. But I can see that they don't actually have that. So, for instance, the browser link dashboard does not have one, and it doesn't have a keyboard shortcut either. So I'm going out on a limb and guessing here that if you don't have a shortcut key, then it's crucial that you then have accelerator keys. So maybe that's the rule when it comes to that. Okay, cool. So that felt good. We made this a little bit, optimize this just a little bit, which I feel good about. So hopefully more people will be able to use our extension. And this is actually the test extension that we have as part of the toolkit. And so we want to make sure that that, of course, is optimized for everybody to use it. All right. Do we have any questions? I'm just going through here. I'm looking at my iPad here where I run all the comments.
So there was one, Steffi was saying it would be neat to have an extension that did spell check for comments. But a quick look, there are already several good ones out there, it looks like. So.
Yeah. We're actually looking at see if we can. If you just search for spell, you should get. This is the big one, right?
Yep.
250,000 installs. This one still says download. It's kind of funny. I'm noticing that right now. I should open a bug on that. I'll just take a note. Open bug on renaming downloads to installs in ENU dialog. ENU. This is because this dialog here used to be called extension and updates. Mm-hmm. But in Visual Studio 2019, we renamed it to manage extensions. But ENU is, I don't know, it just rolls off the tongue. It's easy. ENU dialog. Yep. And LiveShare has an update. By the way, we're getting rid of that so that you no longer get a notification when LiveShare has an update. So that's coming in 16.10. It's not in yet. I think it's coming in 16.10. So it will be in some update, in some not maybe the next preview or something like that. I think that will make a lot of people happy. Okay, here's one from Jan. When will we be able to inherit from base command to be in the toolkit? I saw you said you had an implementation. Oh yeah. So one of the problems we had with the implementation of the base command class. Let's show it here. So let's just is that what if you want to have, let's say that you in your extension, you're using the toolkit, and in your extension you have 5 commands and they're all doing kind of the same thing, and you want to create a base class just for your 5s that inherits from the base command. So you can do that now. So you can do something like internal class, and we're going to call this my base command, like something like this. It's going to take a T and it's going to inherit from base command runner window like this. That's the base class, and then you can put in your helper methods and overrides and stuff in here if you want to, right? And then we can do this. We can then say that my base command, I can spell it right here. Oop, there we go. So Jan, you can now inherit, you can multiple inherit all these. Right now it wants the command attribute to be on the highest, what's that called? Not on any base class, but on the top class in the inheritance hierarchy. But you could, like what we could do is that we could look including here if that was desirable. I didn't do that because I'm like, well, when will you ever want to do that? So I'm like, okay, that might lead to some weird stuff if we do that and people do it by mistake or something. But it's totally possible. We can totally do that. So I just did it for this. So yeah, Jan, your wishes came true. I hope this is kind of what you wanted. Do that. Boop. What else do we have?
That looked like about all the questions. There just some kind of general discussion on, new to C#, which is cool. But
Stephen has a good question here. Isn't downloads more accurate?
Yeah.
So let's hear. What do you say? Isn't download more accurate though? Extensions may be downloaded, installed, tested, and then uninstalled as not needed by the individual. So I'll tell you exactly how that works because I happen to know. So let's go and look what the marketplace says. Marketplace.visualstudio.com. So it used to be that on the marketplace we had a download count, and that's what we still. That's why it still says download in the Visual Studio Extension Manager dialog. And the way that the API, that Visual Studio talks to the marketplace over the marketplace API to figure out are there any updates, and for the searching and installing and all that sort of stuff. When it comes to the automatic updates or any updates, that's actually a different endpoint in the marketplace API than the install endpoint. And so we know, and we have for many, many years known how many people install, like that means that they basically click the download to install, versus how many people download, update. And so it used to be that we took the aggregate of those two numbers, and that was the download count, because that actually reflected how many people downloaded. It was accurate when we're talking about downloads. But the problem was that it turns out that over the years, you could boost, and I might have been the reason for this change actually, because or one of them is because that if you have frequent updates, let's say you update your extensions 3 times a week, then Visual Studio will download it 3 times a week, right? And so if you have 10,000 users and 3 times a week you have a new update, and Visual Studio once a day will go out and install updates, and they will do that behind the scenes, right? For automatic updates, you don't need a restart or anything like that. So if it's a per user extension, rather. So that means I get 30,000 downloads per week. And it doesn't really reflect how many installs I have or how my extension compares to others that don't update their extensions 3 times a week. And back in the day when I did Web Essentials, I would update sometimes several times a day. I guess I had a lot of time back then. and so it's a more accurate reflection to look at the install counts to see, well, how many people actually have it installed. Like the download count doesn't really matter. And yes, you're right, Stephen, there will be false positives because people might just test them and decide to uninstall them again, and that's problematic. We know how many installs there actually are of extensions of each, but that's not something that is shared outside, because that's like some telemetry stuff and all that sort of stuff. But we actually know the exact number, and the last time I looked, it's not like crazy far off. It's different than the number that we see here on the marketplace, but it seems like it's the same level of different no matter what the extension is. And so I think that's what matters. So it's basically just a hang up from old times that we didn't rename this downloads to installs to align those. No. Well, actually, is it download? No, it's the same number. 1.7 million. 1.7 million. Yeah.
There's a few questions on command IDs on base classes and stuff. I don't really, this is over my head. Jan says you wouldn't want a command ID on a base class. And then Max says, what happens if you set a command ID on a base class? Well, VS look at the base class's command ID. Oh yeah, that's
so Jan, that's what I thought too. So let's take Jan's first. What would be the use case for having a command ID on the base class? The way I see it is, I haven't thought it through, I guess, but imagine that you can have multiple command attributes on a class, because you want the same methods to handle, or for some reason the way you want to handle your extensions your commands is like you have multiple buttons, but they kind of all do almost the same thing. So what if you have multiple? Then what if you move that to the base class and then you just keep the differences in the implementation on top of that? I don't know. Yes, as I said, I didn't really think it through, but it was something about like, what if we added support for having multiple command attributes?
Mm-hmm. This reminds me of some of the questions I've heard from people now that there's default properties for interfaces, and people you have to start kind of thinking through that.
Yeah, I haven't dived into that at all. I need to look at that. I remember seeing the proposal came up like 2 years ago or something, and I thought that was neat. What do you use it for, John?
Honestly, I don't totally know. I guess it's if you have like a common value that you're almost always going to have on the interface. I'm not honestly sure.
Oh, right. It's like almost like a mix between an interface and a base class.
Yeah.
You can end up with. Yeah. What else we got here?
Let me see. This is interesting. Rhett's saying at some point you could talk about the possibility of having a non-visual mode for Visual Studio and VS Code. And, you do have the command line CLI tools. So, you know what I mean? Like, especially with .NET.
Right.
I mean, but yeah.
Well,
Visual Studio is it's an integrated development environment. It has so much. It's hard to think of that.
We are actually looking into reducing noise in Visual Studio. And visual clutter and clutter in general, I'd say, right? There's a lot of commands, there's a lot of options. And one thing that I think Visual Studio has had issues with in the past and the present is not hiding things that are not contextually applicable.
Yeah, everything's in your face, and it's kind of like, welcome to Visual Studio, and it's like putting someone in the cockpit of an airplane.
Yes.
Where there's lights and buttons and switches and words everywhere. And I think that's part of why sometimes, especially for getting started, people feel more comfortable with VS Code, because it's very simple. It's like, here's your code, even though it's not the simplest experience, but
I would argue that Visual Studio is better for like students and all this sort of stuff, because they don't have to set up their own environment and install testing tools and all that sort of stuff. It's all contained. It's one package, one install, done.
Yeah.
You can make other arguments that goes counter to that, but here, if I close the solution, let me show you an example. We have a bunch of stuff to analyze. Why can I analyze when there's no solution loaded? Why can I debug? Well, because there are windows. Maybe I want to show the SAML binding failures window, right? Which is true. Maybe that's why I came into Visual Studio. But maybe it's okay that we are more opinionated and say, no, you don't do that. Or it's hidden behind something, right? You hit the Alt key, then that shows you everything. I don't know. I'm making this up. Edit.
That is an interesting. I've been getting used to this more on Mac, but they have the Option key, and on Mac, there's a lot of stuff that's not even visible until you hit the Option key. Problem there is it's kind of not discoverable. You don't know it's there until you accidentally hit Option. You're like, whoa, there's all this stuff, So.
Yeah. So I think that's something we want to look into. Here's I actually opened an issue on that a long time ago, and I think they decided that they haven't heard any complaints from users, so they didn't feel like they wanted to spend time on it, which is fair, right? Because we get like thousands of bugs we open ourselves against each other and stuff. So you don't get to everything. You can't prioritize everything. But my thing was like, you can't go to anything when there's no solution open, right? So all of these should be, disable. Enable equals false on all these commands. The same, you could argue, well, find and replace. Well, maybe not, because find and files control does not need a loaded solution. It can look at any, like here in my GitHub stuff, for instance. But we have it. And it's like, oh, well, maybe you shouldn't be able to set bookmarks. Maybe this should be. Maybe the whole edit menu should not be there, right? So anyway, I think that's something that I want to look into. And another thing is like, we have a toolbar. I actually make mine a lot smaller than default. You can see mine here's. I remove all the icon stuff from it because I don't like that clutter. All I need here is basically my extensions. Usually I have settings, but settings is like too hard to add. So whenever I get a new Visual Studio, I don't like to go in here. I'm just going to do it now. I'm actually getting a Surface laptop for one of these days.
Oh, cool.
Oh,
that was the one they just announced, right?
Yeah.
Amazing.
I wrote our admin and said, hey, I got a 13-inch. Can you help me? She's like, yeah, I'll help you. So that was wonderful. It wasn't that sounded like it's way too simple for what it was. Okay, so I need to find. See, it's like problematic. I have to go in here. That's the standard toolbar. Okay, menu bar. Here we go. Menu bar. Go under tools.
It's been a while since I looked at it.
I
didn't know there was that preview there.
There's a preview?
Yeah. If you in commands.
Oh yeah. Yep.
It's probably been there for a very long time and I just hadn't seen it.
Yeah, so toolbar, we want standard. And then I need, here we go. And then we add a command. And I want to add tools. Here's how we do it. The problem is I have to go find it every time. So this is kind of, look at this. These are the IDs oh my God, this is interesting. So this is NuGet. And notice how NuGet, they didn't put a look canonical name in their vsct file. So we get sort of the raw name of their command here. I'm guessing that's why. I don't know. But that's interesting. Yeah. So I'm looking for options. There we go. Options. And I think I can drag and drop. I have to move it. Where do I need it? Here's my manage extensions. I need it right after that one. So boom. Now that's what I want. Hey, let me ask the audience. Should we always have the tools options be like sort of a toolbar button like that? I just go there so often. It might be because I work at the Visual Studio team or because I'm an extender. I just go to tools options so often.
I use it a lot.
Just having that button right there would be super helpful.
Yeah. I use it a lot, although I use it a little bit less now when I try to use the search, the control Q search. And a lot of time that'll take me straight to the option that I'm trying to set.
Right. So, I like that too. But I just don't remember doing it all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, Cynthia says, yes, let's get that one here. It would be kind of cool to just, because it's not part of the standard toolbar. It would be nice if it was in here, right? That you could just check it. Manage extension is. But for some reason, the options is not available on the standard toolbar. I should see if I can add it. So add options command to standard toolbar. Yeah, I'll open a suggestion on that. Yeah, John says, I thought about adding it, but it's only 2 clicks. That's right. But those 2 clicks, it's just, you have to like aim precisely with your mouse. Or actually, now I just need to do what I'm saying, right? I should do Alt-T-O. Alt-T-O. Boom.
Yeah.
There we go. I kind of forgot about accelerator keys. That's not so good. So, all right.
Cool. Wow.
I think we went through them all, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's some general discussion. There was like, for instance, talking about simplifying things. Life lessons saying like make a simplistic version for each language with basic setup. So like HTML or whatever. I think a lot of that kind of works. Like that's a next step on some of the stuff you were saying, where just having it contextual. Like if I don't have a file open, don't show me edit.
Yeah. So there's so many categories in like reducing clutter or stream. Let's call it streamline. That's the more positive. We're gonna like a streamline sort of the UI or whatever to sort of the task at hand. Let's call it that. And then make sure that nothing gets in the way.
There was one quick question just for people that aren't as familiar with it. So can you use dark theme? And yeah, there's definitely some built-in themes, and dark theme is.
Yeah.
So a lot of time I don't know about you, Mads. I tend to use dark theme when I'm programming by myself, but when I'm presenting, I tend to use the light or default themes just because it's a little easier for people to see.
Yeah. When presenting, always use light theme.
Yeah. But there's tons of themes.
But if you go into online Visual Studio Tools themes, you got a bunch of themes to choose from.
And this is one of those
polarized.
If you close this and just do in the search window and type theme, it'll take you right to this too.
Yeah, you can just search for theme. That's right.
Yeah. So
there's all those. I think there's Dracula. There's Solarized. There is
for Dark Knight theme. I don't know if there's.
Yeah. Night Owl.
Yeah, Night Owl's a good one.
Yeah. So anyway, there's a bunch, and the first one was actually how to create your own theme. So we want the designer, that one. This is the old one. This is the one we want. So if you want to design your own theme, do it here. It's actually super easy, and it spits out a V6 for you, and then you just upload it to the marketplace, and you become a millionaire overnight.
Nice. I see how that's worked for you.
Yeah, right.
So
I only have one theme. I actually did write a theme. Well, no, I have never written a theme. I take that back. But I did here. Blue theme. So when we did a new theme in Visual Studio 2019, the new blue theme, some people say, "Oh no, I want the original blue theme that's from like 2017 and earlier." For whatever reason, I think the original one was like people complained it was too purple in 2019, and then we fixed it before. Like this was during preview. Yeah. So by the time we hit the GA, the official one, first release of 2019, it was fixed. But I got the old blue theme from Visual Studio. They gave it to me and said, "Yeah, it's okay. You can publish it." So this is the actual Visual Studio 2017 blue theme. But I didn't write it. Right? I just got it and I put it in an extension and shipped it. Huh. Someone was mentioning about like, is there going to be a dark theme for SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio? I don't know, but I just saw a tweet today that they just came out with an update. So like a new version is out. So I don't know if that will have a dark theme. And someone here was saying, hey, There's Cynthia. MS build output window verbosity is a pain to get to as well. Yes, absolutely. And that's why you want to have the tweaks extension so that you can just set it right here on the output window.
Yeah.
Right here. Oh yeah, and even Jan calls that out. Yep. Here was the actual complaint. Yeah. And so let also this be inspiration. Like whenever you get to situations like this where, hey, it's hard to set verbosity or whatever it might be, go to developer community. I think we have a link for that in the banners, John.
We do. I'm going for it now.
Yeah. Go to either go there. No, not that one.
Oops.
Developer community.
Oh yeah. Whoops. This one.
Yeah. Yep. developercommunity.visualstudio.com. You can create a new feature request. You don't have to come in from Visual Studio like I'm doing here from send feedback. You only have to come from here if you want to report a problem. But you can also suggest a feature. So go ahead and do that. We actually listen and look at every single one of them. So do that and share them. Put them on Twitter. Get all your colleagues and friends to vote for them. That matters.
That's something I always remind people. Like if you hit a weird issue, or like you have, like if you do go through there and do report a problem, that sends us like the diagnostic stuff so we can help debug it. And then you'll get a link like this on developer community. And like you said, share it with your friends, share it around. And like that's where you can track it and see as we're working on it. You can see when we fix it and when it's released. So
yep, exactly. So I really like for you all to do that. It creates better products for all, right? We all benefit when one of us do that. So let's all do that, and we all benefit even more.
And it really does. Like we get, like we see the numbers. We have meetings with our bosses, and they say, "Why is this one so high?" And like like it really helps us prioritize work. So
yeah, it totally do. It totally does. Rather, yeah. So do that also with bugs. If you find bugs, report those problems. Even small stuff like paper cuts, like things that you don't even think about anymore because you've worked around these small paper cuts for the last 15 years of using Visual Studio. So you don't even think of them as an issue, but they're paper cuts, right? And death by 1,000 paper cuts. We don't want more paper cuts. We want fewer. So it all counts.
When people report things, it's not, there's a decent amount of the time where we've thought of the thing and talked about it, and we need to hear it from customers that it's actually not just us thinking it, it's that you also agree. And so there's often times where I'll think of something, people say like, well, nobody's asked for it, and then I'll find the issue and like I'll look and I'll hear it, you know what I mean? So it actually is really helpful.
I think a really fun anecdote on that one. Oh yeah, Steffi. So paper cut just means like it doesn't harm you, right? It's a little like when paper cuts through your skin on accident, it doesn't even bleed. It just like goes owie.
But it hurts, yeah.
But it hurts a little bit. It's kind of it's super annoying. And so, but if you get 1,000 of them, right, that's gonna really hurt. Like then you die. Yeah. So, but a single one doesn't harm you. So no, I think the fun anecdote about like one of those paper cuts that we've all just lived with for so long that we don't even see the issue anymore was the one, John, you remember this one. And I think everyone else does. Like, okay, so you're writing code, you're building the project, right? And then you write some more code and then you hit F5. And then the build fails. And then you get a dialog up that says, "Hey, do you want to run the build failed? Do you want to run the last successful build?"
Nobody ever wants that.
No one ever wants that, right? Ever. And it just kept doing that. And there was no little checkbox that said, "Don't show me this again." Yeah. And now there is, I think it's in 16.9, right? So what we shipped on March 2nd was 16.9. Now has that little checkbox so you can like not get that question again. And it's like, it has got to be a very cheap fix, but it's like, no one sees it anymore. We got used to that paper cut. Yeah. And so, but it got some votes and someone started promoting it, and all of a sudden it kind of came up on the radar more. It doesn't mean that that we only look at votes. It's not just the vote count that's the only thing, but it's one signal out of many that determines the impact. And that's what we go for. We go for impact. And so if we have a strong signal, like, hey, there's a lot of votes on this, or there's a lot of comments.
Combination too, right? Because sometimes it's like, hey, there's a decent amount of votes and it's a really easy fix, so let's do it. Like sometimes it doesn't take a whole lot of, or it aligns with something we're already thinking about.
Yeah, exactly. We're doing some work in that area anyway, so we might as well just do this one as well. So that's a lot of that stuff too, because it's much cheaper to do if we're already like coding in those files where that would go. So okay. Yes, it's just called tweaks. So there's a question here. Is it MS tweaks extension? It's just called tweaks. It literally just tweaks. There it is. Okay. I think that's it for today. That was like today's topic, I feel like, was the minority of what we talked about.
There's a lot of good stuff though. It's great. I thought it was really cool. You pointed out the community toolkit stuff, and that's exciting to see. So
yeah, you haven't seen it before. So what do you think?
I think it's great. I think like sharing this information and having and all the things you were saying about like making it easier to just like both to get started and reuse things and do common things, and then also the discussions, I think is going to be really powerful. I think it's awesome. Very cool.
Well, that's good to hear, John. All right, everybody. So that's it for now. And make sure you tune in next week. I don't have a topic up yet. I will Monday or something like that. I know exactly what I'm going to do. I know exactly, but I'm not going to tell you.
Okay.
It's a secret, and it's a surprise, and you're going to like it. And it's going to be... this is going to be of high interest to you. You don't know how interested in this you're going to be for reasons I'm not going to get into. So make sure to bookmark next week and get ready to ask questions. We're going to have a lot of questions. I'm not sure how much I'm able to actually code and all this sort of stuff, so it might be a heavy one on the talking, but hopefully I'll be able to show some stuff. Make sure to tune in.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.